Hey you guys, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to tell you how I find the stocks that make it into my small cap portfolio. I'm making this video because some of you guys, after seeing some of my other videos about semiconductor stocks, said, hey, how do you find these? First off, not investment advice. Second, investing in small cap stocks is really risky. And I just share this with you because I think to put any substantial amount of money into a small cap is a very risky proposition. The only way to offset that is to make many of these smaller risky bets. Then if one of them suddenly drops a whole bunch, it doesn't have as much of an effect on the whole portfolio. What I'm trying to do is I'm looking for companies that outperform the market. I want to make as many of these bets as I can of companies that I think have a chance at actually having greater returns than the average. So let's just pick the S&P 500, even though that's a large cap index. Like a very accurate benchmark, maybe the Russell 2000 Growth Index, because that is small cap companies that are growth oriented. And then what I want to do is do better than that, okay? It doesn't have to be by a lot. And it doesn't have to be every stock in the portfolio. If 3 or 4 of them wind up doing really poorly, but 5 or 6 or 7 do really, really well, that can offset the losers. I try to find other investors out there who do this as a profession, and I try to find out which one of these are actually really good at it. Hundreds of thousands of money managers out there, and most of them suck at their work. They just can't even beat the benchmarks, and that's just the dirty secret of money management. But there are a few, if you dig, that you can find who are actually doing better than the average. And that's all you need to do. You don't have to be brilliant in investing. You just have to be a little bit better than the other guys on average over a long, long time. I searched through best small cap mutual fund or best small cap funds or something like that. You can try it for yourself. Some of these are like the top 100. And what I do is I go through and I just try to find out which of these funds, some of them have only been around for like 2 or 3 years. They're just hot funds and they attract a lot of investor dollars because people just look at the last year and they just have short-term mindset. But I look at people who have been doing this for a while and seem to have a track record and seem to know what they're doing. And that just sort of narrows down like whether the stocks in their portfolio are just like some screen by some computer algorithm and it just says here are the stocks, or whether this is a person who understands the sector in which they invest. I'm going to give you an example of one of the funds, okay? The one fund that And again, I looked probably at least 10 different of these small cap funds, and I try to learn something from each of the managers and from each of their portfolios. And the one I'm going to show you is not the best one or the only one I looked at, but I feel like it's instructive because you'll see why. So the company is called Needham, and they have a fund called Aggressive Growth Fund, and the portfolio manager's name is John Barr. And I've literally gone to their website and downloaded the latest quarterly reports and annual reports and read them just to get his thinking on investing. So again, I'm looking into the mind of the person who's making the decisions, trying to see whether they understand what they're doing. Also, I look at their returns over the past quarter, over the past year, over the past several years, and see whether they've built up a record. Because what I'm looking for is consistently good, above average returns. So what I noticed in John Barr's portfolio for the Needham Aggressive Growth Fund was the first stock, the number 1, was this Supermicro computer. And this is a company that I've talked about so far this year, but when I first came across his fund, it was in 2023. And I looked at the stock and it was up, at least 250% last year. And I went, oh, there's no chance I'm investing in this. I just took it off the list as an option because it had gone up so much. But I mean, kudos to the investment manager because he had been holding it and he had recognized a really great return in Supermicro computer. And then I looked at another stock in his portfolio, and this was called Vertiv, VERTIV. VRTIV. And I also noticed that the return in 2023 for Vertiv was off the charts. Well, it was on the charts, but it was like at least 100%, maybe it was 150%, 200% return. And again, I just am very wary of stocks that have gone up a lot in a short period of time, because I feel like if I decide to invest in this company, there's only one way it's going to go. So I try to avoid the high flyers. So I kind of ignored Vertiv. But I looked through each of the stocks. I literally look at every single stock, at least in the top 10 of the portfolio. And I just try to understand the company and see if there's something about that company that appeals to me. And I invest in Aspen Aerogels, which I notice is the #2 investment in John Barr's portfolio for needed aggressive growth. It's 4.22% of his portfolio. And so I think this may have been where I first learned about Aspen Aerogels. This is the only stock I see here. Actually, he also invests in Nova Limited. I don't know if I discovered Nova Limited from his portfolio, but at least in his top 10, 2 of those stocks are in my portfolio. These are just the top 10 in his portfolio. This particular portfolio owns many, many stocks. I don't remember the exact number, and I can find the exact number for you. I'll put it on the screen here. The way that Barr has set up his portfolio is that there are so many companies that if one of these loses 20 or 30%, it's not going to have a noticeable effect on the overall portfolio. But if he has several of these stocks and he puts enough of them, I feel like the top 10 stocks have a huge impact on the portfolio. Off of my memory, I think that the top 10 stocks in the Needham Aggressive Growth Fund make up 30% of the fund. So if he knocks it out of the park with a couple or 3 of those, the overall portfolio is probably going to perform pretty well. And this is what I have noticed with his investing, is that he tends to take big bets on a few high conviction stocks, and it looks like, at least in the last couple of years, his performance has been really good. He was an analyst in the semiconductor industry, and this isn't just over the last few years. I think 10 years, 20 years ago, he understands it well. And if I were to guess why he's performing so well right now, it's that semiconductor stocks, chip stocks, have just done really, really well in the past couple years. And this has really been his time to shine. So keep that in mind too. Whenever you're looking at a portfolio manager, they might be very good at a certain time, but it might be that their expertise and the market are kind of coming together in a great way. And that's why I think it's important to look at lots of different kinds of mutual fund or ETF active managers, because each manager has their own forte. In a nutshell, that's kind of how I go about getting a list together. I literally have a journal, like right here. This is it. This is actually it, a black bound notebook. And I write down each portfolio manager. I write down some of their top stock picks for more research. And then I just have several pages, 1 page to each of these managers. And I go through and I just look at the stocks one by one. Again, I started with about maybe 50 different stocks I was looking at last fall. And I just narrowed it down. And I had it down to maybe 15 or 18 stocks, and then I just kept narrowing that down. One of the stocks I've talked about this year in videos is AEHR Test Systems. And that was one of the stocks that almost made it into this portfolio. There were a few of these small cap managers who owned it. It did phenomenally well in 2023, and I think a lot of people thought, oh, this is going to continue in 2024. But for some reason, I think it was just the size of the company had dipped below 1 billion. I thought, wow, this is a really small, like a tiny company, and maybe fragile. So AEHR Test Systems did not make it into my portfolio. So that is in a nutshell how I go about doing this. And I just wanted to make this video to share it with you. If learning about investing in small cap stocks, especially the semiconductor sector, is interesting to you and you're not yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and then you will get a heads up whenever I make a new video. Thanks so much for spending some time with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.